welcome to part 2 of the Premier League preview, brought to you by sportsbet.io. Do remember to like, comment, share and subscribe to get your latest previews for the Premier League, for football across Europe, the Champions League, NFL and also the NBA as well. And do leave your score predictions and your thoughts for the games as we're looking at Matchday 16. In part 1, we've looked at the big games. We've covered the Manchester derby, Liverpool against Fulham, Arsenal and Chelsea as well. It's the best of the rest now. It's all the rest of the Premier League. And we're looking at the score predictions from Neil Mellor and Paul Robinson. And we'll start with the 3 p.m. kickoff on Saturday, which is Newcastle United at home to Leicester. 1.31. Newcastle, that's a bit short. I'm not sure I trust Newcastle at that price. Leicester at 8.6. At 6 for the tie. After 3 straight wins in the Premier League, Newcastle have now not won in 4, and after 3 straight defeats in the Premier League for Leicester, Leicester have not lost in the last 2 games, the 2 games that Ruud van Nistelrooy has managed. And coming to you first, Mel's, in this one, your thoughts and score prediction, please, for Newcastle at home to Leicester.
Still fancy Newcastle. Yeah, they got beat surprisingly heavily at Brentford. I know Brentford are good at home, but they had more shots than Brentford in the game, but were beaten 4-2. So response, I think there will be a response. So inconsistent, Newcastle. Where are they? A 12th in the league, but only 5 points off top 5. So that's still in reach for them. 2 wins in 11, not good enough in the Premier League. It has to improve, and it will this weekend. Leicester, how did they come back from 2-0 down against Brighton? How? The Ruud factor. 1-1, drawn 1, so they've had a bit of a pick-me-up there with the new manager. I think this is where he gets his first defeat. I am all over Newcastle to win, even though they've only scored 8 goals at home this season, to win handsomely. Biggest win of the season, 3-0 for Newcastle.
I hear you, and I'm going to put down 3-0. I just wonder if I can trust Newcastle with 1 win at home. You know, West Ham came here and won, and West Ham are no great shakes as well, and that sums Newcastle up, isn't it? They played great against Liverpool to get a 3-3 tie, but the game before that they were dismal and didn't even score against a West Ham side who were conceding plenty. So braver than I am to trust Newcastle at 1.31. What about you, Paul? Where are you going in this one?
I'm a lot braver than you. I'm a lot braver than both of you. 4-1 Newcastle. Seeing Leicester play against West Ham. Leicester beat West Ham 3-1, but they got absolutely pumped. They were played off the park by West Ham. They came back against Brighton to draw 2-2. They've been fortunate in both games that Ruud van Nistelrooy's been there. And I think this is where he gets his comeuppance. Defensively, I think they're weak. I think they can concede too many goals. Newcastle have got to turn it round at home. 4-1 to the Geordies at home. Big win.
Both gone for comprehensive victory for the Geordie boys. I will tell you that you're right, Newcastle have scored more goals away from home than at home. Leicester have scored 10 goals away from home in the Premier League so far this season. That's the same as Aston Villa and just 1 less than Arsenal and Manchester City. Both gone for firm home win for Newcastle. And next up, wow, talk about pressure games. This is an absolute must-win. It's Wolves at home to Ipswich. I'm going to say it again. Gary O'Neill, you get the impression he's just hanging on by the skin of his teeth. 1.92 for Wolves. That's going to test you whether you trust them less than double your money to win this one. Ipswich at 3.8 and 3.8 for the tie. Who did I go to first last time? I went to Mel's first last time. So after being unbeaten in 4 Premier League games, Wolves have now lost their last 3, and after being unbeaten in 3 Premier League games, Ipswich have now lost their last 3. So both these teams coming into this crunch game in a poor run of form. Paul, thoughts for Wolves and Ipswich and your score prediction, please?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be pretty, this one, is it? It's going to be pretty ugly, I think you can probably say, this game. Gary O'Neill's stats are something like 2 wins in 18, 3 wins in 25. It's a really poor run of form. And Mel's been banging on about every week, but you question how he's still in the job. Listen, I like him. I think he speaks really well. He's a good young English manager who I think deserves an opportunity. But at some point, owners, chairmen, CEOs, whoever's in charge, will panic about Premier League safety. Ipswich for them this year, I think it's about enjoying the Premier League. I don't think there's a huge amount of pressure on Ipswich that they have to stay in the Premier League. Listen, it's difficult when you fall out and you try and get back in. One of the hardest things to do is to get into the Premier League, get promotion. But I just think there's a lot more pressure on Wolves and the size and the stature of the club to actually have to stay in the Premier League. He lost El Sacchio on Monday when we thought that one of them would go. He didn't, kept his job. Run of results are just, 4 at Everton. I don't think anybody saw that coming. They're poor Wolves. Don't trust either of these 2 teams, but I think Ipswich are tighter. I think it's going to be tight, and I think it'll be ugly.
4.
Pardon?
4-1. 4-1. Sorry.
What 4-1? I said I think it's going to be tight and ugly, and you just shouted 4 at me.
Yeah, for who? Who's going to win the game and what's your score prediction?
Nobody's going to win the game. It's going to be a horrible 1-1 draw.
1-1 draw. Okay. I will tell you, by the way, that the last 5 meetings between these two sides have all been in the Championship. There's been a grand total of 2 goals in those 5 games, 3 0-0s and 2 1-0 win for Wolves. Wolves have picked up more points and scored more goals away from home than at home. And Ipswich have picked up more points and scored more goals away from home. So that tends to think that maybe Ipswich could be playing this one at 3.8. I think many people have this down for the draw, same as you, Paul. What about you, Neil? Your thoughts and score prediction, please.
Yeah, I hear everyone saying how much they like Gary O'Neill, but results have been awful. I thought he's one of the few managers who've come out after a defeat and under pressure and almost tried to convince people, I'm actually okay for this job. Do you know his excuses? Well, I've lost this amount of players. I've sold £200 million worth of players and bringing in young players, but the results are not good enough. But yeah, I almost believed him for a minute. Yeah, I don't know how he's still in a job, but 4 points from safety Wolves, it's not good enough. It is not good enough for Wolves. They're in a relegation battle. I'm all over the draw, like Paul, and again, a score draw. Ipswich away from home aren't going to win many games. They've won one, surprisingly, at Spurs. I don't think they'll go there and win, but they'll get a draw, 1-1.
Yeah, I couldn't see anything beyond a 1-1 when he said both teams will score. I couldn't see it being a 2-2 or 3-3. You never know with these two sides, but that wouldn't help out either of these two sides, as that gap from the bottom 3 to the teams above them is starting to really develop. Wolves 1, Ipswich 1 is your thinking for this 3 p.m. kickoff. We've got a 5:30 kickoff on Saturday now, which is Forest at home to Aston Villa. 2.62 for Forest. Aston Villa are 2.72 and 3.4 for the tie. So it's almost a pick-em. Since beating Fulham 3-1 at home last season, Forest have not won any of the last 7 home games in which they have conceded. And after 1 win in 8 Premier League games, Villa have now won their last 2. So they have got over their blip, if you like. I'm coming to you first, Mel's, in this one. Forest against Villa. Your thoughts and score prediction, please.
Yeah, two sides that have gone reasonably well. 5th v 6th this season. I think if you're looking at the form, Forest at home, it's a banker home. Won 3 of the last 4. Villa have lost 3 of the last 3 away Premier League games, so they've struggled on the road, but have picked up recently. I mean, Paul was at the game, but what a result that was to beat Leipzig away in the Champions League. So I think they'll take a big boost from that going into the game. Who starts? Is it Watkins or is it Duran? Watkins started against Leipzig. Duran came on and scored a goal. Whoever does start will be a goal threat for them. I think Villa will have just enough to beat Forest. I know Forest have done great this season, but this could be a bit of a surprise in terms of that form. Forest good at home, Villa not great away. I've got Villa to win this 2-1.
Gone for an away win for Villa. Villa have, in the Premier League since Forest came back up, Villa have won both games at home to Forest, but haven't won at Forest. They've lost and drawn at the City Ground. I've got a stellar question coming up soon, but first, Paul, your thoughts and score prediction for Forest Villa.
I was impressed with Villa midweek. Changed to a back 3. Morgan Rogers, for me, is one of the players of the season, the way that he's interacting with the team. He plays every single game. You look at the amount of games and the stats around Villa. He rotates, he rests players, but not Morgan Rogers. He plays every single game that he's fit and available to play. Ollie Watkins came off at half-time, so that's one to watch if you're looking for your goal scorers. Duran might start. Don't know why. He never mentioned it in his presser afterwards, Unai Emery. Don't know whether he's injured, took a knock, or whether he just had the weekend in mind. I think they've got a lot of firepower, Villa. But again, Forest are having a fantastic season, aren't they? 5th, the win at Man United last week. They're going to kick on with the confidence. I can't see anything other than a draw. I find it really hard to separate these two teams. I've been really impressed with them both. Villa play the way that they did away at Leipzig. I think they'll just edge it, but I think it's too tight to call. I'm going to go for another 1-1 draw.
Yeah. I think this is the game that many people would tip as a draw as well. There's very little to separate them. I will tell you that for club and country, Chris Wood has scored 13 goals in his last 15 games. Villa last one. Here's your question, and I'm going to say that you're going to get one of these right. Okay, Villa last won a Premier League game at Forest in 1995. They won by 2-1. The same score prediction as what Mel's has gone for this weekend. Who were the goal scorers that day? Forest.
Darian Atkinson and Dean Saunders.
The White York.
Dean Saunders is in there.
Darian Atkinson.
What was Savio? What was he called? The striker Savio. What was he called? Remember this? These Millie.
Serbian.
Milikovic, what was he
Yeah.
called? Was it him?
No, it's not him.
No,
Thank goodness for that.
that was before him.
I think the Forest one is fairly obvious. If you think 1995, this is the one I
Collymore.
thought you'd get.
Collymore.
Stan Collymore. Now, I don't think you're going to get, even though he is recognised as being one of the best strikers, most physical strikers in the Premier League, in the early age of the Premier League, I don't think people remember his time at Aston Villa. I think he's renowned for being at a club elsewhere in the Premier League. But who was the other goal scorer for Villa that day?
Dion Dublin.
Done us there.
It's not Dion Dublin.
Didn't need that silly clue. You've thrown me that silly clue.
Can you say the other club just to speed things up a little bit?
Yeah. If I said, think of a recognised goal scorer for Wimbledon in the Premier League, you would say
John Fashion.
John Fashion.
there you are. You see?
Was it Fash? Oh,
Yeah.
Would have been there all day.
Exactly
Never
right.
got that.
That's why I didn't think you'd get the goal scorers for Villa that day, because obviously Dean Saunders is recognised for being Liverpool and John Fashanu is recognised for being at Wimbledon, and yet John Fashanu and Dean Saunders were the goal scorers for Villa last time they won at Forest. Although Neil, you've gone for Villa to win this weekend, and Paul, you've gone for the tie. Right, let's move on to the we hate each other. Go on.
So pleased to do that.
What's that?
Savo Milosevic.
Milosevic, that was the player. Got there in the end. He didn't score.
Right, let's move on to the derby, which I think most of football goes, why do you really hate each other? Brighton at home to Crystal Palace. This is your 2 p.m. kickoff on Sunday. Brighton are 1.86. Crystal Palace, they are 4. 3.85 for the tie. Brighton have won 3 of the last 8 home games in the Premier League. It's not stellar home form for Brighton, and Palace have lost just 1 of their last 8 Premier League games. Paul, I'm coming to you first for this derby. Is it really a derby? Brighton at home to Crystal Palace. Your thoughts and score prediction, please.
Of course it's a derby. It's even got a name. It's the M23 derby, isn't it? I'm sure that's what they call it, the M23 derby. Saw Palace last week against Man City. They've got something about them, Palace. I know the results haven't been great, and you look at their league position, but actually he's getting players back. Mateta looks fit again. He looks sharp. Munez on the right-hand side, the right wing-back for Palace. He looks like a player who's going to get goals this season because they play with 3 at the back and he bombs on and he's their outlet all the time. Scored his goal the weekend against Man City. Scored the week before against Newcastle in the last minute. And he's a player to watch for Palace because I think he's going to pop up with a few goals this season. Brighton at home, drew last time out against Leicester, 2 each. Brighton at home, different proposition, but I think Palace will go there and get something. They'll be resilient. Defensively, they have conceded, but I think they're getting better. They'll play with 3 at the back. They've had, draw against Man City last time. I'm going to go for another draw. I think there'll be goals, but I'm going to go for another draw. I'm going to go for another 2-2. Picked a few draws today, but sticking with them.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I think this one has got draw written all over it. Crystal Palace have done the absolute perfect thing. You know, when you start the season, Paul, and you're losing game after game after game, the first thing you want to do is just stop that rot, even if it's just picking up draws and being more difficult to beat. And I think Palace have done that perfectly. Brighton have won the last 2 home games against Crystal Palace, but 4 of the last 6 games between these two sides have been a draw. I think this may have draw written all over it. Mels, what's your thinking for Brighton Palace and score prediction, please?
I think it'll be a good game. Yeah, I think it will be a good game. I'm glad Palace kept with the manager because they were struggling, weren't they? And they're now 4 points clear. Good result against City. Should have probably won the game with the chances they created. So, I think both are capable of scoring. I like Brighton. I do like Brighton. I think they've got more goals in them than Crystal Palace. Disappointing to have let slip a 2-goal lead at Leicester last week. I think they'll be too strong for Palace. They've got a good record, 6 unbeaten in this derby game. It'd be a cracking atmosphere. I am on Brighton to win this one, 3-1.
They won 4-1 at home last season. So Brighton 4, Crystal Palace 1. But, I quite like Palace. I think they can get something from this one. But you've gone for a home win for Brighton. Next up, 7 p.m. on Sunday. And the reason that we've got these 7 p.m. kickoffs on Sunday, I'm reliably informed, is to just give Spurs and Chelsea a little bit more recovery time after away days in Europe during the week. This is the Maurizio Pochettino derby, as nobody calls it. Southampton, they are 4.2 to win at home to Spurs, who are 1.73. 4.3 for the tie. Southampton have scored in all of their last 5 home games in the Premier League. In the last 3 defeats at home, though, Southampton have conceded 11. And Spurs have won just 5 of their last 20 away games in the Premier League. One of those victories, of course, was that 4-0 thumping away at Manchester City. I went to Paul last time, so Mel's, come to you first for Southampton Spurs. What's your thoughts and score prediction, please?
I actually feel sorry for Southampton fans. 8 points from safety. They got beat in the last game 1-0 at Villa. But all I'm hearing is it was only 1-0. It's like, come on. Do you want to win games? Do you want to get anything from the game? Really do feel for them Southampton fans. It's going to continue. Of course it's going to continue. Nothing's changed. So, Southampton to get beat. It's a case of how many. Don't trust Spurs, but do away at Southampton. That's a tough game for them in the Europa League away at Rangers. I wonder how much, that might have taken out of them. But even so, I think they're good for goals, and Southampton will give you chances. I am on Son to score. Here you go. Give me one of the teams. He scored 2 away Premier League goals in 2024. Just give me one of the teams he scored at away from home in the Premier League. He's only got 2 in the Premier League away in 2024. Give me a ground that he scored at.
Man City. He always scores at Man City.
That's your guess. Wrong.
Fulham.
He did last year, though. It was probably before 2024.
He scored at Anfield in 2024 and Villa Park. They are the only 2 grounds he scored at in the Premier League in 2020. Anyway, Son to score, Spurs to win handsomely. Southampton, I'll give them a goal, 1, because Spurs can't defend. Spurs to win 4-1.
Gone for a 4-1 victory for the away side. Spurs have scored 9 goals in the last 3 games at Southampton. The last 3 meetings between these two sides have all had over 3.5 goals in the games as well, so plenty of goals. I will also tell you that producer Sam is a Portsmouth fan. He will allow no sympathy in this preview for Southampton at all. So, thoughts and score prediction, please, for you, Paul, on your former side Spurs.
First of all, we say we feel sorry for the fans, Southampton fans. You just feel sorry for fans genuinely. 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. I mean, really? Speaking from experience as a player, the difference between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock, 3 hours. What recovery are you going to do in 3 hours? You're still going to get up at the same time. You just sat around waiting all day for the game. You just don't think about fans. 7 o'clock on a Sunday night, how are they going to get there? What's the travel? What's the transport? Everyone's got to get to work and school the next day. Absolutely ridiculous kickoff time, but it'll be a cracker for Spurs fans. Make the effort to go. 5-0.
It's gone for 5-0. It's gone for an absolute thumping. What is it like as a professional footballer then, adjusting to these weird kickoffs? Because obviously you have a routine, you meet up, you have food, you get prepared for it. And, for 3 p.m. on a Saturday, that's a routine that everybody can fall into because you play at those times on a regular basis. But when suddenly you're thrown a 7 p.m. kickoff on a Sunday and it's a one-off, so you've no idea how to approach a kickoff at that time, how do you go about it? How does that knock people out of a routine, or does it not at all?
Well, go on, Mel, me, you. Listen, it doesn't matter. You get up at the same time every day, regardless, because you've got your own family lives, you've got kids, you've got families, whatever you've got. The time you wake up and have your breakfast or you go for your walk or whatever will never alter. The only time that really tends to throw you, I used to hate it, was like the 11:30, 12 o'clock midday kickoffs. Used to hate them. But 7 o'clock at night is no different to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You just sat around all day waiting for the game. Like I say to you, they think they're doing players a favour. They're probably not. The lads would probably just rather just get out and play and get it done.
Yeah, and that won't change. 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it's the same sort of time, so no difference. I agree with Robbo. It was the early kickoffs at 12, the 12:30s, where you're thinking, do we have pasta for breakfast? Do we have a bowl of cereal? It was one of them which does sort of throw you out. I was two fillets of chicken and pasta at 8 o'clock in the morning. Have a bit of that.
Was you one of them? Oh, was you one of them? Had the pasta. Honestly, them kickoffs in the morning they used to do. You come down. Some of the lads would be having like a 3-course meal, spag bol and soup and everything. I was a handful of nuts and 3 double espressos. That was me.
I will tell you, by the way, that Son was mentioned in this, and also Paul, you've gone for Spurs to score 5. Spurs won at Southampton 5-2 in 2020. And how many goals did Son score that day in that 5-2 demolition of Southampton?
0.
Scored 4.
4 of them.
Scored 4 of them. Yeah, Harry Kane scored the other. He's guaranteed not to do that this weekend.
Can I change my prediction because I don't trust my team for a clean sheet? I'm going to go 5-1.
5-1. Yeah, you can change that. We'll allow it.
A clean
You
sheet.
should have done 5-2 like the last one. That would have made sense.
a 7-goal thriller back in 2020. And the final game that we're looking at for Matchday 16 is an 8 p.m. kickoff on Monday. It is Bournemouth at home to West Ham. 1.71 for Bournemouth. West Ham are 4.6 and 4.1 for the tie. Bournemouth have won the last 3 games in the Premier League, and should they beat West Ham and Man City pick up 0 points against Manchester United, they will go level points with Manchester City, will Bournemouth. West Ham have lost 6 of the last 10 Premier League away games, and they've conceded 23 goals in those 6 games. Right, Paul, come to you first. Last game of the weekend, Bournemouth-West Ham. Your thoughts and score prediction, please.
Cracking season, Bournemouth, aren't they? Ivan Nielsen looks like he's going to be a decent sign as well. He looks like a player. And at home, you struggle to back against Bournemouth. The 3 pens at Wolves the other week, still can't get over that. Beat Spurs at home, beat Ipswich, beat Wolves. They're looking strong for me, Bournemouth. West Ham, can't trust them. With Lopetegui, just don't see any change. Although I saw him play against Leicester last week before. Played well, dominated the majority of the game. There's a performance in there, but you look at the results and you look where they are, 14th in the Premier League. I see a little bit more misery for West Ham before things get better. 2-1 Bournemouth.
They're having a phenomenal season, are Bournemouth. The last 2 meetings between these two sides both finished 1-1. In fact, West Ham are unbeaten in the last 3 games away at Bournemouth. But West Ham beat Wolves last time out, and West Ham have only won back-to-back games in the Premier League once in all of 2024. There is a sign of the inconsistency for West Ham. Neil, your thoughts and score prediction for Bournemouth-West Ham, please.
Yeah, I can't trust West Ham at the moment. I thought there was togetherness because of what had happened with one of the players, Antonio. Wish him well with his recovery. I thought there was that togetherness. You could see that in the performance, much needed performance and win against Wolves last time out. But yeah, I just don't trust them to back that up, unfortunately. And Bournemouth are a good side to watch. They'll have a go, and it could be one of them where they score 2 or 3, or maybe miss a few chances and it ends up being a draw, but they will have a go. I think this lad's due a goal. One of Bournemouth's best players. He hasn't scored in his last 4 games. Semenya, what a good player he is. He is destined for bigger and better things. Really like him. So fancy him to score. And I'm going to be professional. I'm going to be professional with my predictions because I ain't changing it. I'm beating Paul at the moment. I've got 2-1 written down. I am not changing my score prediction. Bournemouth to win 2-1.
The last goals covers, by the way, the guy who's got 2 in 2 for Bournemouth against West Ham is no longer there. Dominic Solanke scored the goals for Bournemouth against West Ham. Jared Bowen, by the way, scored last time West Ham played away at Bournemouth. He's been amongst the goals. He scored last time out, and he's been setting up goals with his assists as well. So Jared Bowen could be an anytime goal scorer. But both finished actually on the same scoreline. You've both gone for a 2-1 home win for Bournemouth. So that is the guys' thoughts regarding Matchday 16 for the Premier League. Good luck with your bets. Always gamble responsibly. And we'll move on now to the score predictions for Matchday 15. So this is where the guys are going head-to-head to win this wonderful sportsbet.io trophy, which both guys really seriously want. They really do. We are monitoring the score predictions. We're making note of all of them, and we're going to see who comes out on top over the course of the season. You get 1 point for a correct result. You get 3 points for bang-on scoreline. And it was 5-5 going into last week. But someone has nudged ahead, courtesy of nailing the West Ham Wolves scoreline, getting 3 points for that. So it did end up being, it's quite fairly low scoring, to be honest with you. It was 6-3 in favour of Mel's. He takes a 6-5.
Quite low scoring. You mean it was ridiculously poor, and we need to do better this week? It was awful. The difference was that one nailed on scoreline. Had West Ham scored a third goal and beaten them 3-1, it would have been you winning this week. So it really was tight between you two. The big difference was the West Ham Wolves, not helped by the fact that we lost a game, of course, with Everton against Liverpool being called off. But we'll see how you fare in the next episode of the Premier League Preview brought to you by sportsbet.io and how you fare for Matchday 16. And now it's time for the trebles. So last week, Mellor, you went for Villa, Arsenal and Bournemouth.
and Arsenal were the ones that let you down. We are putting 10 USDT on these bets, and so far in the bank, it's still 73, just over 73 USDT that's been banked for Mellor. Will collate all the money over the course of the season and donate it to charity at the end of the season. And we're still waiting for a winning treble from Robbo. He chose Arsenal.
If you go back to the start of the season, there was 6 of them, I think, but then the game got scrapped. So I don't like this game. Get on with it. I don't like this one.
His protests have been registered.
Who did he pick last week? He didn't get any, did he? Did he get any?
Well, it was a bad. To be fair,
if I started winning the game and get scrapped, so I don't care. My treble this week's Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea. Going for London treble. There you go.
Robbo went for Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool last week. Liverpool got game called off. Anyway, we'll move on. This week you've gone for Arsenal, Spurs, Chelsea. I made a note of that. All London affair. 2.87 USDT. So 10 USDT on that will return just shy of 30. And Mel's your treble for this weekend, please.
Yeah, not quite as obvious as Robbo. So I've gone for Brighton, Spurs, and Newcastle.
Both gone for Spurs, by the way. I know you've convinced them, but it'd just be the most Spursy thing to not pick up maximum points at Southampton.
Don't worry, when we win all this money, you'll just take it off us anyway. We won't be able to give it to charity.
Brighton, Spurs, Newcastle, 4.24 for that treble, which if I put 10 USDT on it, will of course produce just over 40 USDT. And if that is banked, you then move over 100 USDT that you've got for charity so far. Thank you guys for your time for Matchday 16. We'll be back for another preview of the Premier League, brought to you by sportsbet.io. Do like, comment, share and subscribe. Get involved. Let us know your thoughts and your score predictions and your trebles as well. Mel's, Robbo, thank you very much for your time. We'll do it again next week. And as always, please do gamble responsibly.